Good evening or late afternoon, whichever time schedule you're on. I'm Dr. Scott Steele. I'm the Director of Instrumental Studies, and it is my pleasure to introduce Will Lopez to you this evening. This will be his senior recital. This is the students ask me not to say culminating experience because they're so tired of hearing it. So this is the confluence of all of Will's learning right here tonight. As you might notice behind me, we have the exciting jazz figure, Sonny Rollins, which is his main topic. Students have an opportunity to choose whether they'll do a performance recital or whether they'll do a lecture recital, which involves some teaching and preparation of some materials as well as performance. And the latter is what Will has chosen for you to do, for you this evening. If you would please join me. Well, actually, I left my phone in my office. But if you would please turn your phones off because it will interfere with our recording process. If not, at least in airplane mode, but not just on silent because it will pick up on the recording. And without further ado, let's welcome Will Lopez.
And welcome to my senior recital. Today we will be taking a journey through the life and improvisatory style of one of the most influential jazz musicians of the 20th century, Sonny Rollins. Over the course of his lifetime, Sonny has revolutionized jazz music. From a young age, his sound caught the attention of legends from Miles Davis to Thelonious Monk, and his career soon blossomed. At the height of his fame, he wrote and recorded some of the most iconic jazz standards in existence, such as Olio, St. Thomas, Air Gin, and Tenor Madness. Through the years, Sonny has continuously pursued an excellence in his playing, which has set him apart as a master of this art form. So let's take a look at just what makes Sonny so special. Sonny Rollins was born Theodore Walter Rollins on September 7th, 1930 in New York City, New York. His family was a relatively poor immigrant family from the Virgin Islands. While his family wasn't necessarily rich in money or possessions or anything of that nature, they were very rich in knowledge of music, politics, and history, things of this nature. And he quickly gained a good head on his shoulders, as some people would say. At a young age, Sonny heard Louis Jordan, who is a traveling alto saxophone player on the Chitlin circuit at the time. The Chitlin circuit was a tour route. Basically, blues musicians would play along the Chitlin circuit to make money any way they could, playing at bars, clubs, wherever would have them. Sonny heard Louis Jordan and immediately fell in love with the saxophone. He started playing around the age of 9. Several years later, he heard Coleman Hawkins, widely regarded as one of the most influential jazz tenor players of all time, and immediately moved to tenor. He begged his mother for many, many weeks to buy him a tenor, and finally, about a year after he switched, he got his wish. As bebop sort of swarmed into Harlem, Sonny Rollins heard this expressive jazz form and immediately fell in love. He knew that he had to play bebop. Along with his friends, the Sugar Hill Gang, he started playing any chance he could. He quickly gained recognition among this group of friends and moved on to be one of the best musicians among that group. After he finished high school, he became a real-world working musician. He went on to play really anywhere he could get a gig, anywhere there was a tenor spot open. And by 21 years old, he was playing or recording with the likes of Thelonious Monk, Bud Powell, and Fats Navarro. After playing with all these well-known jazz musicians, he was heard by none other than Miles Davis, one of the greatest jazz trumpet players in history. Miles heard him and immediately knew that his sound was important, knew that his sound was unique. And so he asked him to sit on his album Miles Davis and Horns, which was recorded in January of 1951. While Sonny only played on 5 tunes, he was so good that Miles asked him to come back. The next album that he played on was called Dig, and it was recorded in October 1951. Dig is especially important in the jazz world because it's one of the first jazz CDs or jazz albums that was recorded on a long playing record. Basically, prior to this, jazz tunes were confined to a 2 or 3 minute span, and you couldn't really play too many solos. You couldn't take your time and express yourself. So really, these LPs allowed Sonny to express himself and really show himself off. His solos on this record really show a natural prowess, an inclination for the horn, and show off his signature sound that he's already developed at this young age. You can hear Sonny's sense of time, his rhythm, and his bebop vocabulary really come out in these early recordings. For my first playing excerpt, I will be performing the tune Dig to demonstrate the sound of early Sonny Rollins. Pay careful attention to the fluidity of his lines, as well as the rough, bright tone of my playing as I mimic his style. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. in the period after Dig was recorded, once Sonny was found, if you will, he began to gain more and more notoriety. He began to become more and more famous. Although, at this point, he still wasn't very happy with his life. Sonny had, like other jazz musicians, delved deep into the scene of drugs and things of that nature. So, in 1955, Sonny decided to check himself into a rehabilitation center in Lexington, Kentucky to deal with his heroin problem. He spent about a year in that facility, undergoing intense therapy to help him get rid of his addiction to the drug. And in 1956, he came back to the jazz world to record some more. His second studio album was a record called Saxophone Colossus. If you ask any jazz musician, they'll tell you it's one of the biggest records of the 1950s. It's a very influential jazz record. The first track off of that, St. Thomas, as soon as it came out, it was an immediate hit. That jazz tune comes from a melody that was sung to Sonny as a child. His mother used to sing it to him before he went to sleep. Sonny took this melody and put chords behind it, put it in a calypso feel, and put it on his record. St. Thomas is an iconic jazz tune, not in that it is a huge hit, but it is also one of the best examples of motivic development in jazz soloing form. So, on our next slide, I have the first 16 bars of the solo from St. Thomas. So there's a couple things that we can take a look at here. The first idea that is presented to us right here is this descending fifth idea, an A to a D, an eighth note to quarter note. It sounds something like this. This idea, while it is incredibly simple, remains the biggest aspect of this solo. Sonny uses this to construct the 5 choruses that follow. As you can see in the entire first line, that descending idea of the eighth note to quarter note or eighth note to eighth note is incredibly prevalent, the first and second lines. As Sonny moves on and develops his solo even more, he moves on to an arpeggiated chord right here. This is moving more into the bebop vocabulary that he has, or that he developed, and you can see the bebop vocabulary through the rest of this line before he returns again to this descending idea of eighth note to quarter note or eighth note to eighth note. So, this is from the Saxophone Colossus recording, 1956. Here we have another solo, all right? Both of these are on exactly the same tune. The second example up here is just from a later album. It's from an album that was recorded in 1964, almost 8 years later, called Now's the Time. Now, we can see, sorry, it's cut off at the top, but we can see some basic similarities between these two solos. This eighth note to quarter note or eighth note to eighth note idea that is shown in the first solo comes back in the second solo. As you can see, it continues on through this entire first line and even the second line. The other thing that, one of the other things that we can see is this arpeggiated chord idea, right? We can see the same, or almost exactly the same arpeggiated chord idea on our second recording of the tune before moving on to a more bebop-centered line for the rest of the tune. All of these things show Sonny's gift at melodic improvisation and motivic development. As you can see, these ideas are incredibly important, and even 8 years later, they come back. Sonny brings them back. He's always constantly thinking about these things. So, with all of this in mind, please enjoy this performance of St. Thomas. Listen to see if you can hear the motif and its development throughout the solo. intermission. When we come back, we're going to be talking about how Sonny develops into more of a free sound and really pushes the edges of motivic development. Thank you so much.